Week 17. Natural and Moral Obligations. Natural obligations. Natural obligations are obligations that are not enforceable by law. They arise from moral or ethical considerations, and do not have legal consequences if not fulfilled. In other words, they are obligations that are based on a sense of moral duty or personal honor. Examples of natural obligations include debts that have expired due to the statute of limitations, or promises made without a legal contract. Civil obligations. Civil obligations, on the other hand, are obligations that are enforceable by law. They arise from legal agreements or contracts between parties. Civil obligations are legally binding, and failure to fulfill them can result in legal consequences, such as fines or legal action. Examples of civil obligations include paying rent, fulfilling the terms of a contract, or obeying traffic laws. Moral obligations. Moral obligations are obligations that arise from a sense of right and wrong, based on moral principles or ethical standards. They are not enforceable by law, but failing to fulfill moral obligations may result in social disapproval or damage to one's reputation. Moral obligations are subjective and vary across different cultures and individuals. Examples of moral obligations include being honest, helping others in need, or respecting the rights of others. 3 types of obligation. 1. Civil obligation. It is the juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do. Example 1. Kiko promised to deliver to Anna a brand new Honda Civic car on June 25, 2020. Active subject equals Anna, because she is the beneficiary of the obligation. She is also the creditor and obligee. Passive subject equals Kiko, because he was the one who made the promise. He is the doer of the obligation. He is also the debtor and obligor. Prestation equals to deliver a brand new car. Since this is a promise that comes in the nature of a covenant, this is an obligation to do. Efficient cause equals the promise, since this binds the parties into the fulfillment of the obligation. Example 2. Pia borrowed money from Vic and promised to pay the same with 2% interest after 1 month. Active subject equals Vic, because he is the beneficiary of the obligation. He is also the creditor and obligee. Passive subject equals Pia, because she was the one who made the promise. She is the doer of the obligation to pay. She is also the debtor and obligor. Prestation equals to pay the loan with interest. Since this is a promise that comes in the nature of a contract, this is an obligation to do. Efficient cause equals the promise, since this binds the parties into the fulfillment of the obligation. 2. Natural obligation. It is the duty not to recover what has been voluntarily paid, although payment is no longer required. Example: Mario is indebted to Paulo in the amount of P100,000.00 payable on January 5, 2020. Mario's sister, Nena, already paid Paulo the full amount of said debt. Despite knowledge, however, that his debt had already been paid by Nena, Mario still paid Paulo the same amount of P100,000.00, and which Paulo accepted and consumed. Note: Mario cannot later withdraw the said payment from Paulo, because he voluntarily paid said amount, despite knowledge that his payment is no longer required. Mario has natural obligation not to recover what has been voluntarily paid, although payment is no longer required. Take note. Natural obligation is different from solutio indebitio. In natural obligation, the person is fully aware that he has no more obligation to pay, and yet he still paid the same. Hence, he cannot recover any more what he had voluntarily paid. In solutio indebitio, the person paid something or delivered something by mistake. He is not aware that he has no obligation to pay to the person. As a rule, the recipient of the object by mistake has the duty to return it. Or if he had already consumed it, he must pay. Its monetary value. 3. Moral obligation. It is the duty that is not mandated by law, but is rather dictated by conscience. Example 1. Every Catholic has the moral obligation to hear Mass on Sundays. If he fails to do so, he is not violating the law, but is merely lacking sense of moral fulfillment. Example 2. Every student has the moral obligation to study seriously and give their parents good grades. If he fails, or do otherwise, he is not violating the law, but is lacking sense of moral fulfillment, and is contravening the good dictate of his conscience. Note: not all moral obligations are civil obligations. There are some obligations that are only dictated by your conscience, but are not dictated by law. Example of which is the obligation to attend church mass. In the same manner, not all civil obligations are moral obligations. There are some obligations that are only dictated by law, but are not dictated by one's conscience. Example of which is the reproductive health law that allows the use of contraceptives to control population. To some, this is against morals, because these are actually abortive medicines. In summary, natural obligations are not enforceable by law. Civil obligations are legally binding, and moral obligations are based on moral principles, but are not legally enforceable. Thank you for watching.